Welcome to How to Build a Rose-Colored Planet, a podcast about the values that shape the human experience. Together we look beyond what divides us to find meaningful ways to build bridges and restore kinship, care, and trust. We don't just exist on this planet, we are co-creating our futures together. I'm your host, Dana Van Ness, and today we are building with rest. There is a certain knowing that lives inside anyone who has ever been pushed past the point of exhaustion. In the Army, we had a word for a particular kind of a day, a boondoggle. It was that rare pocket of time when the pace finally slowed, when every checklist was complete, every vehicle serviced, and every soldier passed their training. We would finally exhale. We'd pile into a few vehicles, drive off base for a long lunch, and laugh until our faces hurt. That laughter wasn't just humor. It was release. It was presence. It was proof that our bodies and minds could finally remember themselves. But even then, rest had to be earned, justified, and defended. It was a reward for survival, not a natural part of being human. And for many of us, it still feels that way today. In a world that measures worth by motion, choosing to rest can feel risky, like we're falling behind or not keeping up. But rest is not the absence of purpose. Rest is what returns us to purpose. When we slow down, the pressure softens. A quieter rhythm emerges, older than deadlines, alarms, agendas, or notifications. A rhythm written into our bodies long before hustle became a virtue. This episode is about that rhythm, about what happens when we stop resisting the pause and start trusting it as part of a meaningful, connected life. There was another phrase we lived by in the Army: hurry up and wait. It meant moving with urgency, rushing to prepare, finish, line up, and respond, only to stand still for long stretches with nothing to do but anticipate the next order. And at the time, it felt normal. It was simply the rhythm of the day. But looking back now, I understand something important. Hurry up and wait trains us to actively resist rest. It teaches us to rush toward stillness instead of relax into it, to brace instead of breathe, to feel tension instead of ease. We learn to move quickly, then stand ready, but never actually rest. Many of us carry that pattern long after the military. We move through life in the same rhythm: push, pause, brace, repeat. It's not rest, it's anticipation, it's survival. And somewhere inside that pattern, our bodies forget how to soften. This is why rest can feel uncomfortable, why slowing down can feel unsafe, why stillness almost startles us. We've been trained to stay ready, not relaxed. And that's why rest can feel like giving up, even though it is actually the opposite. Pausing does not mean quitting. Rest is not surrender. Rest is what keeps us from quitting. It is the antidote to burnout. My daughter calls it crash out. The reset that helps us continue with clarity rather than collapse. But rest asks something different of us. It asks us to unclench, embrace, and unlearn that old rhythm. It asks us to remember a gentler one. What if we saw rest as a different kind of strength? We live in a culture that praises busyness, productivity, and pushing through. We are taught that stillness is waste, that quiet is unambitious, that exhaustion is the cost of being successful. And yet, nature tells a different truth. Well, the tides pull back before they return. Trees rest in winter so they can bloom again in spring. Our lungs move in cycles. Inhale, exhale, not one endless breath. Rest is not the opposite of growth. It is part of the pattern. When we pause, we're not falling behind. We're falling back into rhythm with ourselves, with one another, and the world we belong to. In this way, rest becomes a quiet kind of rebellion. It pushes back against the myth that constant motion equals value. It says, our worth is not measured only by what we produce. Before we talk about community or the planet, we must pause with ourselves, a personal reckoning with rest. Rest asks us to look gently and honestly at what we believe about slowing down. We can ask ourselves, do I see rest as something I have to earn? Do I feel guilty when I stop? Am I afraid of losing momentum? Do I struggle to believe that I deserve rest? These are tender questions, but naming them is powerful. Rest doesn't always look like a retreat or a long weekend getaway. It also looks like having a cup of tea in the quiet before the house wakes, turning our phone face down for 5 minutes, letting our shoulders drop when we notice tension, sitting in the car for one extra breath before going inside, driving home and taking the more scenic, serene route, choosing silence instead of more stimulation, accepting the present moment as enough. Rest is ordinary. It's simple. It's human. It is us showing up as ourselves. This personal reckoning, this noticing, becomes the doorway to everything that comes next. Think about this. If rest is slowing down, trust is what makes slowing down feel safe. Our minds want proof that we won't fall apart if we pause. Proof that everything won't collapse without our constant attention. Proof that we are still worthy, still valued, still enough. But we cannot think our way into rest. We have to trust our way there. Rest invites us to loosen our grip on control, to believe that not everything depends on us holding it together every moment, to trust that life will keep moving even when we take a breath. Every time we force ourselves through exhaustion, we interrupt a conversation between the body and the spirit. Rest is the language they use to speak. When we listen, the noise softens, the body exhales. Life becomes something to experience, not just manage. To live fully, we must accept the invitations to pause, not as an afterthought, but as part of being alive. Rest is also collective care. It doesn't stay contained inside our own bodies. The moment we honor it, it moves outward. In a world built on burnout, rest becomes community care. When we respect our limits and say no with honesty and model logging off and being truly done for the day, we give those around us permission to do the same. Our ancestors understood this rhythm. Communities rested together, feast after harvest, slower winters, shared evenings of story and reflection. When the land rested, so did the people. Today, our lives are structured differently, but the need is unchanged. When we push without pause, we drain ourselves, our relationships, and our communities. Rest interrupts that cycle. It reminds us that we're not machines. The planet also moves in rhythms of rest, night and day, winter and spring, tides that ebb and flow. When we mirror these natural rhythms, even in small ways, we practice reciprocity. We care for ourselves in a way that also cares for the world. Rest becomes a form of solidarity. It says, we belong to one another, and we will not measure our worth only by what we can endure. Perhaps this is part of becoming better ancestors, passing down a gentler way of being so future generations don't have to break their bodies or wreck their spirits to remember how to rest. Now, back to my story as a once crusty sergeant. I often think back to those Army days and that word boondoggle. We worked until every requirement was met. Only then would we take that long, unhurried lunch off base. We laughed until it hurt. Laughter that felt like release, like belonging. like a return to ourselves. At the time, it felt like a reward for endurance. Now I see it differently. Those moments weren't extra. They were essential. They reminded us that beneath the structure and the stress, we were human beings who needed food, connection, and a reason to exhale. We all still carry that need. There is a rhythm beneath the noise of our lives, steady, patient, waiting for us to come back to it. When we rest, we return to that rhythm. We set our tools down. We allow our nervous systems to soften. We remember that living isn't just surviving, it's feeling alive. Maybe your long lunch off base looks different today. Maybe it's a quiet walk, a gentle moment on the couch, or the courage to say, I'm done for today. Rest can become a homecoming, a way we return to ourselves so we can return to each other. Okay, are you ready for your take-home question? This week, I invite you to spark a deeper conversation with someone you trust, someone you love, or someone you're still learning in real time. Ask your neighbor, friend, or dear one. If you allowed yourself to fully rest, what part of your life might open, and how could that opening offer something meaningful to your community, your relationship, or the planet? Let the answers remind you that rest is not retreat. It is an opening, a widening that makes room for connection, creativity, and collective care. And as those openings ripple outward, remember, rest is how we return to ourselves so we can return to each other. Our planet holds each of our footprints and spins to our heartbeats. Let's be good to it and to each other. Thank you so much for being here. Your presence is a gift. Come back next week for more tools to build our rose-colored planet.